At 82, I've learned a lot about life, but there's one decision that still weighs heavily on my heart. I deeply regret not resolving my family conflicts sooner, allowing silence to grow where connection should have been. I know many of you might be facing similar situations, whether it's a quiet tension in your own home or a long-standing rift with a loved one. We often dismiss these disagreements, thinking they'll just fade away, but the truth is, they cast long, enduring shadows. Before those shadows consume everything, I want to share 5 hard truths I wish someone had told me years ago. Because, you see, unresolved conflicts don't just fade away like old photographs. They slowly change everything about your life, and once those bonds are broken, rebuilding isn't as simple as you think. Stay with me until the end, because some of these lessons might surprise you, and if you know someone grappling with family issues, this video might be exactly what they need to hear before making a life-changing decision. Now, let's get started. Truth 1. The weight of unsaid words. The biggest shock after years of family conflict wasn't the arguments themselves, the raised voices, or even the harsh words spoken in anger. No, it was the profound, suffocating silence that followed, carrying a weight I never anticipated. I thought avoiding confrontation meant avoiding pain, but holding on to those hurts, those grievances, became a silent burden. It didn't just fade away, it settled deep within me, taking a constant, hidden toll on my mental and emotional peace. It's a quiet burden, often overlooked, but it gnaws at your spirit. I remember, one summer afternoon, decades ago, at a family picnic, my sister, Clara, had made a comment about my parenting choices, something sharp and unthinking. My immediate instinct was to defend myself, to argue, but I bit my tongue. I told myself it wasn't worth the fuss, that it would just cause a scene. I smiled, a little too tightly, and changed the subject. In that moment, there was a fleeting sense of relief, a quiet triumph of keeping the peace. But as the days turned into weeks, that relief curdled. The words, Clara's, and my own unsaid rebuttal echoed in my mind. It was a slow creep of resentment, a tiny, jagged stone that had been placed in my heart, and it wouldn't dislodge. That initial silence, that choice to avoid the discomfort of a difficult conversation, set a pattern. It wasn't just about Clara's comment. It was about every slight, every misunderstanding, every hurt that followed. Instead of addressing them, I'd tuck them away, believing they'd eventually disappear. But they didn't. They accumulated, creating an invisible wall between us. Even years later, a simple phone call or a shared glance at a family gathering would bring back that old familiar ache. It was a knot in my stomach, a persistent low-level stress that became a constant companion. It's insidious, this cost of silence. I've seen it in others, too. My friend Martha, who rarely speaks of her estranged son, but her eyes hold a quiet sorrow whenever his name comes up. Or old Mr. Henderson, who sits alone on his porch muttering about an argument with his brother from 50 years ago. They carry the should-haves and the if-onlys, like heavy backpacks, a constant reminder of what was left unsaid. There's a quiet desperation for closure, a longing for a conversation that might never come. It's not just my unique experience. It's a silent epidemic among us seniors, this burden of unspoken regrets. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Now, let's move forward. Are you, like I was, carrying the weight of unsaid words? What is the true hidden cost of that silence in your own life? Take a moment, truly consider the toll it takes on your present peace, and on the future you still have ahead of you. Because once you understand this burden, you might find the courage to finally lay it down. The second hard truth I wish someone had hammered home is about how easily family connections fray. I thought distance would mend things, that time away from arguments would heal the wounds. But it only created more space for connections to stretch thin and eventually snap, leaving me far lonelier than I ever imagined. It's not just the sharp sting of a fight. It's the quiet, insidious way that physical and emotional distance compounds over time, making it harder and harder to reach out, until the gap feels too wide to cross. I remember so many holidays spent alone, or with only a fraction of my family. There was the Christmas Eve where I watched festive lights twinkle from my window, knowing my sister and her children were just a few towns over, sharing laughter and gifts, but I wasn't there. A silent disagreement from years prior had grown into a wall, and neither of us knew how to tear it down. The ache of seeing others celebrate, knowing I was missing out on those precious moments, felt like a constant whisper of regret. It wasn't just missing the food or the presents. It was missing the warmth, the belonging, the simple joy of being together. And it wasn't just holidays. The real heartbreak came with the milestones. I missed seeing my grandniece graduate, a bright young woman I barely knew because of a rift with her father. I wasn't there for a significant wedding, or for a baby's first birthday. I'd pick up an old child's drawing, perhaps one of my own children's, and then gently put it down, feeling the profound loss of not being present as the younger generations grew, changed, and built their own lives. These moments, once lost, can never be reclaimed. They become empty spaces in your memory, filled only with a lingering what if. What I didn't fully grasp then was the ripple effect. A conflict with one person, say a sibling or an adult child, didn't just affect that single relationship. It often fractured connections with others who felt caught in the middle. Suddenly, family gatherings became awkward. People choosing sides, unspoken alliances forming. The entire family fabric started to weaken, not with a dramatic tear, but with subtle unraveling threads. I saw families, once vibrant and close, become a collection of individuals, each holding their own hurts, unable to bridge the divides that I, and others, had inadvertently created. It's a silent, spreading poison. So I ask you now, with the weight of my own experience, are you letting silence create chasms in your family? How many more holidays or milestones are you willing to miss before you decide to reach out? Because once those connections are broken, once that emotional distance becomes a gulf, it's incredibly difficult to bridge. Think about the cost of these deepening divisions. The very bonds that are meant to support you in your later years can become the source of your deepest loneliness. Now, let's talk about the third hard truth, one that often weighs heavier on us than we realize. The burden of blame. I clung to being right for so long, not realizing that blame was a heavier burden on me than anyone else. At the time, it felt like a shield, a way to protect myself from further hurt. But what I discovered, much too late, was that self-righteousness can become a cage. It locks you into a position, a story of grievance, and keeps you from moving forward, trapping you in the past. I remember a particular disagreement with my sister, decades ago, over a misunderstanding about our mother's care. I felt completely justified in my anger. Every point I made felt valid. Every complaint, entirely deserved. And in those initial days and weeks, there was a strange satisfaction in feeling right, in knowing I had logic and truth on my side. But that satisfaction, I learned, was brittle. It was a thin veneer over a growing hollowness. The more I clung to my righteous anger, the more distant my sister became, and the more isolated I felt, despite my conviction that I was in the right. It was a victory that brought no peace. That initial feeling of being justified slowly twisted into something far more insidious. The grudge became a constant companion, a dull ache beneath the surface of my days. It influenced my mood, coloring interactions, even with people unrelated to the conflict. I would ruminate, replaying conversations, sharpening my arguments in my head. The energy it took to maintain that anger, to keep that wall up, was immense. It stole my peace of mind, replacing it with a low hum of tension. I didn't realize how much of my mental and emotional space was occupied by that unresolved conflict. A heavy, silent package I carried everywhere. I've seen it in others, too, in the eyes of friends who carried decades-old resentments. The bitterness isn't always spoken aloud, but it's there, a shadow that dims their joy. You see the stress lines etched deeper, the shoulders held tighter. They might talk about justice or principle, but beneath it, there's often a deep-seated unhappiness, a lack of genuine peace. The truth is, holding on to blame doesn't punish the other person. It ties you to them in a negative way, and it's asterisk you who carries the weight day in and day out until it becomes a part of who you are. So if you're watching this, I have to ask, are you holding on to blame, sacrificing your own peace for a sense of being right? What freedom are you missing by clinging to that old story, that old hurt? Letting go of blame isn't about condoning what happened or saying it didn't hurt. It's about choosing to release yourself from its grip. Forgiveness, I've come to understand, is often more for the forgiver than the forgiven. It's a gift you give yourself, a chance to finally lay down that heavy burden and step into a lighter, more peaceful existence. Now, let's talk about the fourth hard truth, and perhaps the most urgent one. It's about the clock ticking. I always thought there would be tomorrow to fix things, to smooth over rough edges, to finally say what needed to be said. Until tomorrow ran out, and with it, my chance. We as seniors know the brutal reality of mortality better than most. Yet we often act as if time is an endless resource, especially when it comes to family rifts. But the truth is, every day that passes is a missed opportunity you can never get back. I remember it like it was yesterday, the crumpled letter on my desk. It was addressed to my sister, Sarah. We'd had a terrible disagreement years ago, silly thing really, about an old family heirloom. Pride had kept us apart. I'd written that letter, poured out my heart, apologizing for my part, hoping to mend the chasm. I even picked up the phone a dozen times, my thumb hovering over her number, but fear held me back. Fear of rejection, fear of another argument, fear of, I don't know what. I'll do it tomorrow, I'd tell myself. And then the call came. Sarah was gone. Just like that. The crushing weight of that unsent letter, that unmade call, hit me harder than any argument ever could. My chance, gone forever. It's not just the sudden losses that steal our chances. Time's passage itself is a cruel thief. As we age, our bodies change, our minds might not be as sharp as they once were. Physical limitations make travel difficult. Memory issues can cloud conversations. What seemed like a simple phone call in your 50s becomes a monumental task in your 80s. Waiting is a luxury seniors often don't have. I look at my own hands now, gnarled with age, and think of all the times they could have reached out, but didn't. The longer you wait, the more barriers appear, making reconciliation a distant, fading hope. I've sat with so many friends over the years, listening to their stories, and there's a common thread. The empty chair. That one seat at the holiday table, the one person missing from the family photo, the silence where a voice should be. They carry the same empty chair, regrets, wishing for just one more conversation, one more hug, one more chance to say I'm sorry or I love you. The pain is palpable, a shared grief for connections lost, not to death alone, but to unresolved conflicts. It's a wound that never truly heals when you know you could have done something, but didn't. So I ask you directly, with all the earnestness of my 82 years, who in your life needs to hear from you? Is there a letter waiting to be sent, a call to be made, a visit to be planned? Are you willing to risk forever for another day of silence? Because the biggest regret isn't always what happened in a conflict, but what asterisk didn't happen because of inaction. Don't let your tomorrow run out before you've had a chance to heal. And now, for the fifth hard truth, the one that truly weighs on my heart when I look back. It's a truth I wish someone had impressed upon me with all the seriousness it deserved. I didn't just hurt myself or those directly involved in our conflicts. My unresolved issues became a silent inheritance, shaping the relationships of those who came after me. When I look at old family photos, or even at the simple family tree drawing my granddaughter made, I trace the lines and see not just connections, but chasms. It's like a pattern, a blueprint for silence and misunderstanding, passed down unknowingly. We think our squabbles are just our own, but the truth is, the way we communicate, or refuse to, sets an example, a subtle teaching for our children and grandchildren. They learn from our actions, even from our inaction. I remember a particular family gathering a few years ago. It was a birthday, and I watched from a distance as my two grandchildren, cousins, stood awkwardly across the room from each other. There was an unspoken tension, a history of slight disagreements that had never fully been addressed. It mirrored a conflict I'd had with their parents years before, one that had been allowed to fester into a quiet standoff. Seeing them, so young, already inheriting that same reticence to speak openly, that fear of confrontation that often leads to deeper rifts, it broke my heart. I saw the echo of my own choices in their hesitant glances, in the way they chose polite distance over genuine connection. It was a heartbreaking realization, understanding that my own unwillingness to bridge gaps had perhaps shown them it was acceptable to let those gaps grow. But here's the hopeful part, the empowering truth that often gets overlooked. As seniors, we still hold immense influence. We can be the ones to break these cycles. Even if you've carried a grudge for decades, even if the silence has been deafening, your actions now can still resonate through generations. A single act of reconciliation, a heartfelt apology, or even just reaching out with an olive branch, can be the first step in repairing not just your immediate relationship, but the entire family fabric. You have the power to change the narrative, to show what healing looks like, to teach by example that love and connection are worth fighting for. You can be the one to lay down the burden of past grievances and pick up the tools of rebuilding, not just for yourself, but for every generation that follows. So as we conclude this journey through these hard truths, I ask you directly to consider this. What legacy of connection or division are you building for your family? What story do you want them to tell about you and about your family long after you're gone? Do you want them to speak of old feuds and lingering silences, or of bridges built and wounds healed? Your actions today, your willingness to confront those difficult conversations, to offer forgiveness or to simply reach out, can lay a new, stronger foundation. It's about more than just your peace. It's about the peace of your entire lineage. Choose to be the one who started the healing. Looking back, I don't regret getting older. Each wrinkle tells a story, each ache a reminder of a life lived. But I do deeply regret the silence, the inaction, the years I allowed misunderstandings to fester and create distance in my own family. These 5 hard truths, the ones I've shared with you today, aren't meant to burden you with guilt. Far from it. They are meant to be a gentle nudge, a quiet whisper from someone who has walked this path, urging you to consider another way. The choice to reach out, to speak those difficult words, to offer or accept forgiveness. It isn't just a gift you give to your family. It's a profound gift you give to yourself. It's a step towards shedding the weight of the past and embracing a future filled with genuine connection and, most importantly, peace. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please take a moment. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Perhaps it's a family member you'll call, a letter you'll finally write, or even just a shift in how you view an old wound. Your thoughts are important to me and to this growing community, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement, reminding us that we're all in this together, learning and growing. And if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear these words today. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you, helping us all navigate the challenges of aging with grace and wisdom. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video as we continue to explore ways to live our fullest, most connected lives.